Hello everyone and welcome back to the class. Till now we have discussed line, shape and form as an element of design and try to understand their role in graphic design. Today we are going to understand space, which is the fourth element. If you look at space in graphic design often referred as negative space or white space, though it doesn't always have to be white. It is the area around and between element and design, or we can say that it is spatial depth viewer are led to associate with the image in a two-dimensional walk. Space plays a critical role in composition and visual communication design, and it can help in multiple ways, such as space can help emphasize a focal point by allowing the eye to rest and then direct attention to key elements, or it can simply help in creating illusion of depth in a composition. For example, when we are talking about the space around the element, and if you take example of logo, a large amount of white space around a logo or an image makes it stand out more, right? That means you concentrate more on the image and logo compared to the surrounding areas. However, if you look at a very crowded place where, for example, you look at outside on the screen, street, and then see the visual composition, you will find that lot of logos and then advertisements are fighting with each other to create an impact, and there it is very difficult to focus on one advertisement or one visual elements which is there on the street. So that means we need a lot of surrounding space as well to make it more emphasized and powerful. However, in this section our discussion is going to be more focused on understanding spatial depth in design composition. But the question is how to achieve this spatial depth, and there are multiple ways to do this. I have listed down few and we are going to discuss this one by one. The first and important one is linear perspective, which is extensively used to create an illusion of depth on a flat surface. Next is color contrast. Through color contrast or different tonal values, we can create an illusion of depth in design. If you remember, we have discussed this in previous lecture as well when we were discussing about form as an element of design, and then we talked about value and color contrast, which creates an illusion of depth and volume, right? Do you remember that? The third one is using contrast in terms of size of the element in the design. So that means changing the size, we can again create an illusion of space and depth. For example, using large foreground image in contrast with the small background image helps in creating this illusion. And this is how it happens in our natural environment as well, where we see nearest things larger in scale in comparison to something which is far away, right? You can also experience this, or you are also experiencing this in your day-to-day life. And if you look at the last way how you can create this illusion is the overlapping, which we have already discussed in previous videos, and also try to understand how it helps in creating this kind of illusion of depth and space. Now let us look at linear perspective. Linear perspective is a technique used in art and graphic design to create the illusion of depth and three-dimensionality on a flat surface. It mimics the way our eyes perceive the world, where parallel lines appear to converge as they recede into the distance, meeting at a single point called vanishing point. This you can experience when you stand on a road and then look far away. You will find that the road is narrowing down, and then somewhere it is meeting at a point where it is vanishes. So if you look at this image in linear perspective, extended parallel lines converge on a one point which is called vanishing point. So this is the vanishing point, and these are the two parallel lines. This is how when we stand on a road and then look and then see how road is converging on a distant point on the horizon. So you can also try this. Another best way to best example is if you stand on a railway track and look at far away, you will find that the track is converging and finally meeting at a point, right? So try this out in your surrounding. There are basically three types of linear perspective: 1 point, 2 point, and multi-point perspective. We can say 3 point, 4 point, 5 point, whatever. And if you look at 1 point perspective, one surface of all the objects are parallel to the picture plane, which is also visible on the screen. If you look at this rectangular, the front face, it is parallel to the surface of the page, right? And all the parallel line, these lines which is converging and then towards a single point which is called vanishing point, and it is happening on the eye level of the viewer. So whoever is looking at it, accordingly the eye level changes, and then the horizon line also shifts, and accordingly you visualize and then see the object. Now if you look at this image, you will notice that all the lines that are converging at a single vanishing point, and accordingly you can perceive an illusion of depth in this whole setup, right? Just to make you understand this in better, this is another example of 1 point perspective where all the lines are converging at a single point, right? Clear? 1 point perspective. Now let us look into 2 point perspective. So in 2 point perspective, no surface are parallel to the picture plane, and all extended parallel lines converge towards either of two different widely separated vanishing point at the eye level of viewer. So in this case, if you look at this image, this is the horizon line or eye level, and then these are the two vanishing point. And then if you look at this house, the no plane is parallel to the picture plane, means the surface of the page. So and then all the lines are somehow it is going and converging and meeting at vanishing point. So and this also happens when someone is looking at a corner or an angle. So thing is that if you want to try this, you go on the street and then stand in one corner where the streets are going in two direction, and then try to see how you can see the perspective and how the things are vanishing and then changing its scale with distance, right? Now look at this image and let me know how many vanishing point you can see. Can you find it out? So if I have to draw a line to indicate the same, there are two directions in which lines are converging. So this is one direction and this is another direction, and this is going to be your horizon where the vanishing point are going to be there, and then these line will go and then meet there, right? So in 1 point perspective, all lines are converging to one point on the horizon or eye level, and then in 2 point perspective you are seeing that these lines are converging and then vanishing, going and meeting two vanishing points which may be far away, separated on the horizon line. Now in 3-point or multi-point perspective, this extended parallel lines converge towards 3 or more vanishing points at the eye level. If you look at this example, so there are two objects. So one object has two different vanishing point here, and then the bigger object has two different vanishing point here and this place, and this is the horizon line or eye level line, right? So for example, if you look at this in this image, we can notice that three directions in which the lines are converging. One is two are going down in this direction, and third one is vanishing somewhere in the sky. Now if you look at level views, and that level views, that means the level on which we are looking at the object, it also decides how a product is visible to someone's eyes. If the level view is in front, you may see just one or two surfaces of the object, depending on whether you are looking at it from the front with one surface parallel to the image plane, like the first example, you are up front and then looking at the image, or from an angle like the third example visible on the screen, so this one. So then you see a different view, that means you see two surfaces. Here you are able to see just one surface. Also, for example, if the level view is low or high, then one ends up seeing two or more than two surfaces. If you look at example 2, okay, so here you are seeing one and then two surface, but your label is up, so you are seeing the top part of the object, right? Or if you look at the example 4 and 5, in 4 you are also again looking from the top and then side, so you can see 3, right? And then if you look at the 5th example, where you are looking from the bottom, still you see 1, 2, 3 surfaces. So depending on your eye level, accordingly you see the object and then their surfaces in a design. Just to understand this from a real example, let us take two eye level. One is an adult human, another is a small kid. If both are seeing same structure or a product, depending on their eye level, the horizon will shift, and accordingly the appearance of the structure will change. Just imagine if an ant is seeing the same object, the horizon will shift to the bottom of the structure, isn't it? You may try looking at a large object or maybe a building once in standing position, then in sitting position, and the last one is laying down on the floor and then looking at it. It will be fun to see how the vanishing point is shifting, and then your view is also changing, and accordingly the perspective is also changing. Now let us check 3-point perspective and try to understand how it works. In this case, if the scale is really huge, for example a big multi-story building, now if you stand in one corner of the building and look at it, you will notice that there are 3 vanishing points, 2 on the horizon line and then 1 which is going in the sky. You can try this while looking on a big building on this street. You will find same thing happening in the real situation as well. Now if you look at old paintings by famous painters, for example this one is done by Leonardo da Vinci, you will notice that they have interestingly used this concept of linear perspective to not only guide viewer's eye but also to create a sense of depth and space in the composition. So all these lines are going and vanishing to one point in the painting. This is again a good example of 1-point perspective, where if you look at the image, All lines are guiding viewer's eye to the central figure. Thus helps in creating emphasis in the center. And even the implied lines in terms of hand gestures, in terms of the figures, how they are looking into the center, at the center image or center figure, it also guides viewer eyes to the central figure, right? So it is not like just you are using a literal line, but it is also about the implied lines. The implied lines can also help to create perspective and sense of depth, which we have already discussed when we were discussing about implied lines and their use in design composition, right? Now let us move ahead and then see a few more examples just to understand this concept of perspective in design. So if you look at famous graphic designer A.M. Cassandre's work, he has used linear perspective extensively in his work to create sense of depth, draw emphasis, and guide eyes within the composition. His works are a good example to understand that by applying linear perspective, graphic designers can make composition feel more engaging, dynamic. So linear perspective may also help to ensure that objects within a composition are scaled proportionally as they recede into the background, and in that sense adding balance and visual harmony to the design composition. It can help to communicate space and volume as well, especially useful in architectural design or infographics, where perspective helps communicate the scale, distance, and spatial relationship between objects. So it can also help to organize complex scenes and add layers to a design, enriching the overall composition by creating a sense of spatial hierarchy, right? So there is another kind of perspective as well, which is called atmospheric perspective. Do you know what is atmospheric perspective? Just think about it. So let me explain this to you. So atmospheric perspective, also known as aerial perspective, because a lot of things happens because of air and light, is a technique used in graphic design, painting, and illustration to create the illusion of depth by simulating how the atmosphere affects the appearance of object as they recede into the distance or when they are up front. So unlike linear perspective, which uses line and vanishing point to convey depth, atmospheric perspective relies on change in color, contrast, and clarity to mimic the nature and to mimic the natural effects of air and light over distance. There are different ways to achieve this illusion of atmospheric perspective on 2D surface, and the important ones are manipulating or playing with texture, value, clarity, and also playing with the color, temperature, and saturation. Let us understand this one by one. So texture plays a significant role in enhancing atmospheric perspective by contributing to the sense of depth and distance in a composition. If you look at this image as visible on the screen, the foreground textures appear very sharper, right? Very much clear, more detailed, and have high contrast, and because of that it is making them seems closer to the viewer's eye. So this area, whereas the objects when objects move into the background, so this one, so all the background, this hills, their textures become softer and more blended and lose clarity as well, mimicking the effect of atmospheric hedge. Hedge means where it blurs, right? So this gradual loss of texture in distant objects support the overall effect of depth in atmospheric perspective, and thus helping to differentiate between foreground and background elements. Now if you look at the second image, which talks about value. Value refers to the lightness or darkness of the color, and it plays a crucial role in enhancing atmospheric perspective as well by creating a sense of depth. So both way it helps. And in this also, as objects recede into the distance, their value typically becomes lighter. If you look at this sky, it's very lighter and less contrasting compared to the object in the foreground. If you look at this part, right? So the foreground object have darker, more intense value if you look at this image, and it has a stronger contrast compared to the background object, where their value becomes lighter and their contrast reduces. This basically simulates how the atmosphere is scattered light, making distant objects appear more faded or washed out compared to the object which is closer to your eye or closer to you. Now, there is another aspect which plays a major role in atmospheric perspective, and that is clarity. So distant object tends to lose contrast and fine details due to the scattering of light. You can also try this looking outside in the environment, in your surrounding. So as visible in the example to your left, this one, the nearer element have sharper, darker outlines compared to the distant object, which is sky and other things. To achieve this, designer may simplify or blur texture, right? So texture can be very clear or blurred. Accordingly, it creates a sense of depth. The last key element to create illusion of atmospheric perspective is manipulating by color, temperature, and saturation. So look at the example which is in your right. Okay, so the object further from the viewers appear lighter, more desaturated, and closer to the color of the atmosphere. Typically it is in bluish or grayish hue. That means generally the color temperature of the object tends to shift towards the cooler color as it recedes into the distance, whereas closer objects maintain warmer, more saturated color like red and yellows, which is also visible in this image. If you look at my cursor, so these are the cool colors and these are the warm colors. So is it clear how to create atmospheric perspective using these four elements: color, value, color, temperature, saturation, clarity, and then texture and value? So I hope with this discussion you will be little aware about the role of texture and all these four elements, how it helps in creating illusion of atmospheric perspective. So in coming lecture as well, we will further discuss about the role of texture, color, and value in design, and try to understand what it is. Now, whatever we just discussed, these four elements, if you look at this famous painting, Mona Lisa by Leonardo da Vinci, it is a classic example to understand the role of all four parameters. In this painting, in the foreground, texture appears sharper. So look at the hand and then this cloth, right? And it is also more detailed and have higher contrast compared to the background, which is this one, right? Similarly, the value of the color in the background shifts towards lighter side and less contrasting compared to the foreground, right? So this is more elevation warmer, this is more cooler. And if you look into the clarity details in the foreground, it is clear and then prominent, whereas it also blurs in the background. Similarly, the color temperature is shifting towards cooler side and turning into bluish hue compared to the foreground, where the color are more saturated and warm, right? So you can find there are many examples. You can also try to click images and try to see. So you just use your phone and then click image, this scenic view or something which captured the large space, and then try to see how the detailing also changes, how the front, the things which are up front are very clear and then defined, and then things which are far away are blur, and then it is fading in the distance. Now let us look at the scale and try to understand how the scale of the object may help to create an illusion of depth and space in design. Scale means the size of the object. So how we can define this? Object scale refers to the relative size of the object within a design. So that means it is very relative. It also depends on the other element size within a composition. And it acts as a very powerful tool for creating sense of depth and space. So by manipulating the scale of object, designer can simulate the way things appear smaller as they recede into the distance, which mimics a real world perspective as well. So you can just see outside in your surrounding, you will find the same thing. This variation in object scale helps establish a visual hierarchy, guiding the viewer's perception of depth, right? And the contrast between large and close objects and small distant one create a convincing illusion of three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional surface. But as visible in the poster by M. Cassandre, which is right now on the screen, the comparative scale between two objects may also help to guess the distance and size of the object from the viewers. In this case, the scale of the ship is huge, right? It almost taking more than 70% of the space in the poster. But at the same time, if you look at the size of the bird which are flying in front of the ship, is very small, and it suggests that the ship is far away, but at the same time it is monumental in size. That's why you are seeing such a big scale of the ship. Okay, so big size of the ship. So this kind of illusion many times designers have created using two elements, where you change the size and accordingly you create the depth, sense of depth and illusion of space and perspective as well. These are two more examples of M. Cassandre work where he has played with the scale or size of the object to create an illusion of three-dimensional space and depth. Right? If you look at the color, it is also the value, the texture also creating a sense of depth, illusion of depth and space. And if you look at the arrangement of these elements, the overlapping is also playing a crucial role in terms of creating a sense of depth. So this is a very interesting example, whatever we have discussed till now, to understand in terms of also it is fading when it is going far away, it is very clear when it is up front, right? So at the same time, it also helps in creating emphasis in the poster. So I would suggest all of you to look into more posters from M. Cassandre to understand this in a better way, because he has done a lot of significant work where he has played with the size of the elements to create emphasis and impact in the poster. All right, so we will stop here, and if I have to summarize this whole section, in this section we discuss about the role of space in graphic design and tools and techniques which can be used to create illusion of three-dimensional space and depth on 2D surfaces, right? And I hope you will go back and look into more examples in your surrounding and on internet to polish this understanding further. And you will also explore with your surrounding looking into your surrounding to understand this 1 point, 2 point, or 3 point perspective which we just discussed, right? And so, all right, then we will meet again in our next video lecture, which is going to be on value, texture, and color. Till then, bye and see you soon.